we hear from Carolina Urrutia, who is the Environment Secretary of the city of Bogotá. Buenos dias, Carolina. Very nice to have you here. And I saw you were listening to all the other speakers already. Great that you are taking part here. The metropolitan area of your city of Bogota has a population of around 10 million people. And of course, infrastructure is also a very important topic there. How is Bogota responding to the climate emergency?
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I think with a city the size of Bogota, we have to put everything in the mix. And I think, as many of those who spoke before me addressed, the specific challenge of facing both COVID-19's repercussions and its economic crises, and further strengthening our strategies for the climate crisis is an enormous challenge. And this picture in my head of an Economist cartoon by Cal, which paints COVID-19 as a warm-up for what the climate crisis is bringing to the world, is always in my mind. Specifically in a city such as Bogota, which has enormous inequalities. We have a city that has some sectors, some areas that still live in the 19th century, others that live in the 20th century, and others that live in the 21st century. So we have to, our interventions for the climate crisis have to be at both ends of the tunnel, making sure that we bring innovation, electric transport, and new forms of technology into our public policy solutions, but also phasing out our dirtiest forms of transport. My mayor always says we still have Euro 0, Euro nothing buses and cargo transport. So we have to invest on both sides, phasing out the dirtiest of our technologies and investing in very new technologies, while, sort of facing up to the fact that we still have lots of technologies and industries that are in the middle. So I'll tell you about sort of 3 things or 4 things of how Bogota is facing this challenge. The first is making sure that we're always aware of the systemic character that the climate crisis needs in order to be adequately faced. We can't have a single strategy. We have to make sure we make sure all our tools are being used. So one of the first things we've done is make sure that we're looking at this issue regionally. Bogota is, of course, as every other city, is not an island. We depend, in terms of our food supply, our energy supply, we depend on a whole region. This is why in February, our mayor, Claudia Lopez, led an effort with all our neighboring states, we call them departments here, in declaring the climate crisis and committing to 10 specific actions to face that climate crisis. The most important of which, of course, in my opinion, is reducing our greenhouse gases in 50% by 2030 and being carbon neutral by 2050. This, of course, doesn't seem like an enormous challenge when we look at it from the Paris Agreement or when we think of it in the global stage. But as I said before, in a city and a region and a country as unequal as Bogota, it is very hard to get everybody on the bus and make sure that we comply with what the science is telling us is our only chance. So looking at it from a regional perspective, and as we actually, Bogota is now only a city, but we've recently signed an agreement with our neighboring state to become a metropolitan region. And of course, the climate crisis is one of the biggest challenges we face as we integrate our transport, as we look into new railway systems, and of course, as we have new strategies for logistics and food supply, an issue we don't speak a lot about, but in Latin America, it's enormously important. Cities can be the motors of transformation for our agricultural practices, which we, beyond a doubt, are the biggest contributor of emissions that concern us due to climate change. So making sure that our cities demand cleaner agricultural production and less intensive ways to use our soil is one of our main commitments as we join this metropolitan region. As many of the speakers before me spoke about, air quality is not the same agenda as climate change, but it is one of the most important. Bogotá still has around 2,000 people that die every year in issues connected to air quality. So one of our biggest challenges is making sure that we use an environmental justice focus to reduce particulate matter and those pollutants that most affect our citizens' health. This is why we have separate strategies, a citywide strategy for air quality, including transport and cargo strategies, and of course for the industry, and one specifically for the south of the city, which is the one most affected by bad air quality, which sort of stays in that part of the city. And that's really a huge challenge because Bogotá has already done most of what it can do in terms of fuel quality. We have very good diesel quality, world class. Our gasoline is reasonably clean. We still have a ways to go in terms of clean gas. But for diesel, we really have cleaned up our act in the last 20 years. So now we have to face sort of the hardest bit, which is changes in technology that don't depend on a single strategy in terms of working with our petroleum producers, but actually working with individual industries and with our transport system. And the third I'd say is, of course, as the Senator mentioned before me, behavioral change. Making sure that our citizens have the information to make their individual decisions, not only in a more informed, but in a more collective fashion. And this is why our development plan at the city level really focuses on behavioral change between all actors in society and not just the government, because normative changes aren't going to do the work for us. Every single citizen has to commit to climate action over the next 5 to 10 years in order to really comply with our goals of being a carbon neutral city by 2050.
Carolina, what would you say is the most important goal which you want to achieve for the next 5 years? Is there this one goal, this we have to achieve?
Well, I think we have many goals that we have to achieve. And of course, the green and the gray agenda are always battling for attention. The green agenda, our protected areas, our cities' trees are very important for citizens. And we have a lot of work on that side. But I think my personal challenge as Environment Secretary is to focus on the city's cargo system. We have more than 12% of our particulate matter is related. We're working on our inventory, so we're not sure in terms of the weight of greenhouse gas emissions, but our particulate matter, more than 12% comes from very old cargo trucks, which are definitely making our citizens sick. So one of the main issues that we have is at the local level, we had a very clearly defined stick. We knew how to fine and how to reduce circulation of these trucks, but we didn't have a carrot. We didn't have a very good incentive system to sort of accompany and support these truck owners, which are many of them very vulnerable segments of society. We didn't have tools to help them with their transitions to cleaner technology. When we speak about these trucks making people sick, of course, the first ones they make sick are the owners and the drivers of the trucks. So it's not a matter of a lack of will, but a lack of resources to make transitions to newer technologies. So one of my focuses is on really achieving a local funds to help us support these transport and truck owners in their transition towards cleaner technologies, hopefully straight to electric technologies. And this has to be coupled with also a very sort of smart not only infrastructure, but logistical strategy for the city, where what we consume comes from is as important as the technology it uses. So I'd say that's one of our main issues, which is as important for climate action as it is for cleaner air.